Hello, welcome back to another episode of our Mega-lo-Mania in Unreal Engine. Unfortunately, it's been quite a few days since I was able to stream, and I've had very limited time to work on anything since really the last stream. But just have to carry on from where we left off. So it's the wrong level. A few minor changes that I have managed to make in between the streams. Let's see if I can remember what they were even. I did some changes to the images, yes. Yeah, so one thing that I realised was that because we've got all the images in our building base class, it is actually possible, rather than having to define our paper sprites or castle sprites array as we have done here, that I could actually apply the appropriate sprite to the appropriate paper sprite in this list instead. So I can simply specify the appropriate sprite in our inherited paper sprite component for the castle, for example, and I can do the same. We'll take the mine. In the mine, obviously the first few are empty, so we've got the pit and the first level mine. So we can actually define the images inside the inherited components, and they can be different in each different class, and obviously in the base class they're all empty, which actually removed a lot of the construction code that we had prior. Still don't like that. Where we were mapping this paper sprites or castle sprites variable to the appropriate paper sprite component. So all that kind of pairing that was being done wasn't necessary. I think I removed it completely. Just trying to verify that. Yeah, initialize paper sprites, which was done here, which took the two inputs effectively. Yeah, it's only ever called there, and it's not called in with the smaller classes. So that saves a little bit of processing and kind of pairing things up. Saves a bit of complication that wasn't necessary. We still need to have a reference to all of the paper sprites so we can switch the image around. But that's kind of a little bit of tidy up. I think I did anything in the controller necessarily. I think I did move some. Yeah, so I moved the scrolling through the sectors into the player controller instead, because that's not something that needs to really be bound by the server. The player should be able to do that when they want. And they can view the sector when they need to. And I think the final change that I did was on the castle. I added the flag. It defaults to the red one, but I think I should clear that because it's a bit confusing. I added the flag sprite, and I've made some changes to the level so that when the sector is spawned, it actually also spawns a castle. Maybe it's not the sector, sorry, no, it's the possession. When the player possesses a sector, if it doesn't, in theory, if it doesn't have a castle, it should possess it and then spawn a castle. That wasn't actually working 100%. So we can spawn a number of sectors and we can iterate up and down them as before. We can spawn a castle. No, I've disabled the spawning of a castle because I'm doing it through the possession now. So we can possess one, and we can see that it actually has a little green flag. Now, in theory, if we so we can't possess it on the right hand side because again, possession in this context is server only. So we can possess another one, and this has got a green flag, but there's no flag over there. So it's just not working correctly quite yet. So in this case we actually do have the red flag on this sector, but again we don't have a flag here. Now in theory it shouldn't allow me to well, it should allow me to possess a sector more than once, but it shouldn't spawn a castle on there. But I'm not sure how true that is. And equally, the possession doesn't seem to change very well. Like in that case, it's clearly that the left-hand player has possessed a sector with what should be the right-hand player's flag, because they, or maybe that's not true. Can't remember which order the flags are in. Which order are the flags in? So it is actually red-blue. So in theory, the left-hand player, player 1, should only be able to possess places with a red flag, and the right-hand player should only be able to possess places with a green. But that doesn't appear to be the same. It does look like that. It appears to be true. It does look like the right-hand player, which should be limited to green sectors, has possessed the red one. Because when you position that over, we can see the red flag. So there's a bit of awkwardness there. It's not really working well, and equally it's not really the end result that we want anyway. Buildings aren't built by a press of a button, so it's a bit awkward to try and make the functionality work, because it's really only temporary anyway. So there's this, we're using the post login function, which is called, or event, which is called when a new player joins. We're using the player index or get player numbers to add this message to the screen. We're casting their player controller to the appropriate player controller type, and then effectively we're just taking a flag off the list of available flags and assigning it to that particular player. Then we're calling this function so that potentially other things could be done if we want them to. And then in this case we were attempting to possess a sector. But again, it's not actually what we want to do. But we don't want to not do it at all. There is certain stuff in there that we want to do. My player controller, the view sector function, yes. And index. So what we could do here instead of trying to spawn a new sector, possess a sector, which isn't really what we want to do. We instead want to, on the player controller, call the view sector function, and we can just leave the index as 0. Seems a bit odd that the view sector actually takes a player controller, since it's actually on the player controller, so we'll have to just fix that up. Taking self, even though self is itself. So I'll just take that reference, remove the player controller, and then in here put that reference back and just tie it up here instead. Oops, wrong one. So it's exactly the same result, just not passing the player controller in there for no reason. Which means obviously in this not in that context, in this context we don't need additional argument. The sector index can be 0 for the time being, so that means that so long as we have a sector, players would focus on it, but obviously we don't start with any sectors. So I think that's the first thing that I'm just going to fix. I think it would be a bit cleaner and clearer if the map was generated without me pressing buttons to do it. That should be fairly straightforward to do. So in the original level that we were working on prior, where we had the menu and things like that, there was kind of ongoing debate on where the creation of the level should be, whether it should be in the level, whether it should be in the mode, whether it should be in the game state, that kind of thing. Given I've got a smaller environment here, and I'm not going to concern myself with actually making a proper map, what we're going to do is, in the init event for the level, which is somewhere down here, the init begin play, we're going to make, maybe we'll do the Don't want to make it too many, so I'll stick with just doing 4 for now. We don't want a 4 each. So we'll do 4 sectors. So it's inclusive, so we want 0 to 3. That would give us 4 sectors. For each of them we want to spawn an actor from class. And it's going to be T sector. So the epoch for the sector, we don't really care what it is, but I'll select 900 so that it can have so it can have the mine and it can have the castle rather than just the castle. There won't be an owner. The collision handling should just be always spawn, and we need a transformation. So the transformation, we're just going to basically try and lay them out in a grid, a 2x2 grid. I may try and improve this and make sure that if we did increase the grid, then it would spawn them correctly. But for now, we'll just get kind of a quick location sorted. So So basically, like we've done in previous occurrences, we'll take the index, we'll find the remainder of 2 and divide by 2. So in this case, it will be, the index will be 0. So they'll both be 0 and 0, which is fine. In this case, so it should be the other way around, I think. In this case it will be the z-axis, but we want to multiply that to get our position, our z-axis position. And then we want to multiply it again to get the y. No, not the y, the x. I don't know how big we'll need to do, so we'll just start with 50. See how that looks. Yeah, so they're very overlapped. And they also go down and up instead of to the right, so I think I've got these the wrong way around. That obviously made no difference. Let's just undo that, then it never happened. I need to swap these ones round. Instead of 50, we'll go for 200 instead. So it's not going to be... yeah, that's a bit better. Yeah, we also... the first one, if we go page up all the way, we actually stop at this one, and then page down is this one, page down is this one, and then all the way over here, we're over there. So it's not great. I don't think it was better as it was. Although it was hard to tell. Yeah, in this case we kind of go round in a circle. Maybe it's because the index is starting at... don't want to cross past it. Maybe because the index is starting at 0. It's getting a bit confused. So we'll just start it at 1 instead. Let's see if we get a bit more order to it. Yeah, so the z-axis probably should be a minus anyway. Because we want it to go downwards. I think that may be a problem as well. And then get rid of that additional 1. yeah, we still start over here and end over there, but I won't worry about that for now. It doesn't really matter which order the sectors are in, so long as they all display, and so long as we're given some by default. So now within the level, I'll just get rid of the function that spawns a castle. We don't want that. And now the only question I have is, I think that the level is event begin play is actually done after the players have joined. So this is where all of our sectors are spawned. And we already have the message the players joined, so actually that needs to be on the computer now. I'll just check the output log just to see if that is in the wrong order. I believe that it will be. Yes, so under hosted game, so non-dedicated server, the first player 1 joins first. I believe that now if I change that to a dedicated server, the sectors are initialized before the player joins. Yeah, the player 1 and player 2 joined much later on. It's a bit of a frustration with when I was looking at this before, is the order of how things happen. We're obviously kind of initializing the map after we've got our first player, and what we really want to do is have our first player possess, own, build a castle on, however we want to look at it, any one of those sectors. So the sector test mode should contain our number of players. And the sector test mode, or that will call this event, new player joined. Yeah, so I don't think there's really anything I can do in trying to trying to kind of force an order here. I think I just need to handle the fact that when this code is executed, there may already be a player that's joined the game. I think some suggestions that I've seen related to this were to we go into our game mode, class settings, class defaults. It would be possible to define players to start as spectators. I think, yeah, start players as spectators. Let's see what that one does in terms of how our event log looks on a non-dedicated server. believe that because they're all spawned as... It still works. It's not what I expected. I would have thought that they would have then started as the expected replay. See what they actually are spawning as in this case. Yeah, so it's spawning a spectator pawn. Only spawning one of them though, which is a bit weird. I would have expected at least two. Yeah, so I don't think that really is going to make any difference. Doesn't really help. Number of players. I think the only way to really deal with it would be to loop over the number of players. Once we've created all the sectors, and player controller, so we also only want to do this, which I didn't do, is make sure it's only done on the server. The actors would replicate anyway, so we don't have to worry about that. The game mode for our number of players. We iterate over them. We then get the player controller. We can get the possessed. Not pawn. One. Get control of pawn, that's one. So basically I'm going to get the pawn that the player is controlling, if any. If it's not valid, we need to possess one of the sectors, but we obviously only want to possess one that doesn't have a castle. So we'll just do it in order. So we get all the sectors. The element should be a T sector. There, we should have a castle there. Maybe I tied that up too soon. Yeah, so I tied up the actors array to the for loop before I told it which actor class it was, unless it didn't know what the array was. So I had to tie it up afterwards.
And you know how to forget all the
So we want to be able to break from this loop once we've found a sector that we can give to the player. So if the castle is not valid, then we can on that element we can construct a building with our team. Oh yes, yeah, tell it what actor it is. Construct a building. Okay. So we're going to construct a building on that sector. And we'll build the castle. We always build the castle at the moment in the same place. Unfortunately, I did delete the element. So it would be -30, -20 is what we used before. And keep missing the pin. Construct a building takes a random sector, which we don't actually want it to do. I think what we'll do for now, just in case, just rename that, duplicate it. And actually this should then be in the sector itself. The sector's going to know where to position it anyway, so it's not really something the responsibility of a different class to say where to build a castle. We want to put the castle where that sector requires it to be. That means our castle. Yeah, so we can't, as we've kind of said before, we can't select on a class. Probably would be better then to actually just have these as enumeration so they can work as required, or just the name, I think, rather than enumeration, because there's only other 4. We'll go with the name first.
What's even better than having millions of songs at your
Don't know the
fingertips for
default.
free? Getting thousands of the world's most loved podcasts in your earbuds too. On Spotify, you can listen to shows from the worlds of comedy, politics, entertainment, sports, business, cats, the business of cats who play sports, just about anything your heart desires. Whatever your niche, Spotify has a podcast for you. Tap on the banner to check out what's streaming right now. Did you know that Spotify makes a playlist every week just for you? Every Monday, you get a fresh
so we
playlist
can use
of
this
30
get
songs
class.
based on others that you love. It's called Discover Weekly, and you can play it right now. But remember, the playlist changes every week. So when you hear something that pricks up your ears,
No, we can't
hit the
use
heart
that.
button to easily find it again.
That's probably getting a
Tap
class
the
of an
banner to
object
start
anyway.
discovering.
I'm trying to figure out is if it's easy, if it's possible to determine which class we need from here. So in the sector, let's look at building. We don't want it to be random. Yeah, we'll putting that here, won't we? Switch building, and we're using a name. We can switch on that name. Yeah, so the dilemma we have here is that if we switch on the name, we have to have multiple instances of spawn actor by class because we can pass that class in. But if we just pass the class in, there's no way we can know what's what. So kind of have to mess. It's only ever going to be here, isn't it? There's no... Once this function works, there won't be any reason to have any other function that builds buildings. So I think it's actually safe to do it this way. Owner should be the sector in every case, and yeah, see, that's another reason why an enum might be better, I think.
I need a scarecrow.
No, not necessarily.
Cause all of the birds know that I'm almost there. I'm barely breathing. I'm feeling weak. You left me in pieces. There's no more to break. Don't wake me up. Not
Yeah, so the sector is actually going to have information about where each of these are going to go. But for now, again, we'll just hard code that location based on what we've done before. We had -30 and -20 for the castle. And then it doesn't really matter where the rest go so long as they're in the kind of the corners of the sector. So we'll just do 30 and -20 and then -30 and +20 for these two. And tie them up.
I need an angel after what you did, 'cause you were the devil, you messed with my
So in this case,
to my mother. You said that you'd be there, but this never ends.
we go into here, we spawn the actor, then we trigger the event. And we triggered that on the sector anyway.
Wake me up, 'cause you're just a ghost inside my head.
Yeah, see what we want then is to take that into a macro. Bit awkward because that's not what we wanted to do in terms of the inputs. Because doing it as a macro means we don't have to define it quite so many times. We can just have the macro input what we want. So it will be building class reference, a location, the vector 3D. Won't have any of them as reference, because if we don't do, then we won't be able to define them and then trigger that event.
You're just a ghost inside my head.
And we'll actually have the output as an object reference of a building. So now we can just call the spawn building castle. So we can just basically put all the properties into our spawn building macro instead of having to define all of that so many times. The end result of that will be the same as we just had. That means our sector can just in construct building access level, yeah, so we don't want the constructed building one. We'll leave the random one because we already have that. But we will change it slightly so that it doesn't call the spawn actor, but it instead calls a constructed building. That's not what we want either. Oh yes, I did. Forgot that I did it as a name. The event. From here we want the constructed building. Yes, and we don't want it by reference so that we can define it in these cases. And we want it if not valid instead. Here, construct random building, that will be a lab, factory, and a mine. So we just have to clear these properties to get rid of them. So that we've kind of acknowledged the fact that we don't want them anymore. So now that's our building code. Check level advancement, we'll leave that for now. And that's our player spawning, sorry, our world map beginning. And then this is handling what happens if a player already exists. Now, we effectively need the same behaviour for players that join partway through, which would be every player but the first. So by default we're saying a viewer sector. That doesn't appear to work. So let's see where we are with that. Yeah, so we've got 2 castles spawned on 2 different locations. That's again not quite what I would expect, unless both players were there when the game started. Or at least by the time it got to get a number of players here.
With my head
the server says have 1 player. So I don't know why we end up with 2 castles. Although yeah, it's probably because this is inclusive. So they're both the same beginning player. So that's better. Now we have 1 castle, so we now just want the second player to get a castle. Players joined. Players joined. So what we can try and do while we don't need the specific sector, specific test mode for getting the number of players, we do need it for getting our event.
Staying up when I go out, you gotta know I'm all yours. But when I say what's that about, you start slurring your words. Tell me why you have to seem so distant when I'm holding you. Your fingertips are drifting away, and I fucking love how it hurts. Why
So that doesn't work unless that's tied up.
love the way you always leave
And
me?
that's tied up.
Why do I, baby, why do I love the touch but never
Now we see our text.
why do I, baby, why do I love the way you
So we'll tidy all the graph up in a moment.
I, baby, why do I love the touch but never love the feeling? Why do I, baby, why do
Get rid of that.
why do I, baby, why do
So that iterates over the players, just in case multiple players are joined at the point the level sorry, initializes the server. We loop through it, but we don't get the player index, so we need to do that. Effectively, we need that code there. Yeah, so the building is constructed, but nobody owns the building, because I put it so that the owner is the sector, but nobody owns a sector. I think that's kind of something that I was intending to keep, that nobody actually owns a sector. The resources would be propagated, but the quantities wouldn't, so that none of the players know how much resources are left on a server, even though they may not expose, the game won't expose that information. We don't want the players to be exposed to the players anyway. So I think buildings should have an owner. We can incorporate that in with our construct building function. Now it's possible for buildings like the mine and the factory and the lab to lose the owner, because if the castle is lost and if therefore the sector is lost, then they don't own it anymore. But the direction I was originally going was that the player owned the sector and the sector owned the castle and the mine. player owned the sector if they had a castle in it, and if they lose the castle, then they lose the sector. Could still do that, just to see how that goes. Don't want to set it here because this code is not consistent. What we want is construct a building. Building only needs to be tied up. So now the building will have a player owning it. Here. Here to own that building. So this is the level. So the level. Let's see what we do. Go with this. So basically a function to do what we were doing before, kind of set up the castle on a sector. In this case, we're iterating over all of the sectors, determining if it has a castle, if so creating one. So I'll take that, put it in here. We'll keep the check in place because that just makes it a little bit more future-proof. That obviously will be might be too bad to do is valid function, and then we can branch. No, I don't think that actually makes it clever. Just in this case, we're kind of, the good output is that it's not valid. So I thought maybe it would make more sense to switch that around. What we'll do here instead is just print out an error message. Our claim function basically builds a castle on a sector if the sector doesn't already have a castle. And we can use that then in this case, sector, and our player. do want to know whether we've claimed it or not.
Lions roaring in the morning sun, searching for a longer day. People feeling like the light has just come. We must never stop the way.
So we should do that the other way around. Default value is false, so we set it to true. In that case, and then we return it. That means in here, we can, if true, break. And now we can take that claim sector function Okay, so the claim sector function is clean and nice, assuming we know which sector they want to claim. That'll work well when they've actually done the building process, when they're actually playing the game. But in this case, we still want to do it a bit randomly and just claim the next available space. Again, because this is somewhat kind of temporary, I think this will work for now. Because officially when a game begins, it will actually know which location, which sector the player should claim, and not just pick a random one, or in this case, the next one. I don't know what those errors were, or at least I don't know why we had errors. And the fact that we don't see any buildings. Okay, so what did we do? Let's step through it, I think. So we actually end up with our first index, or our get number of players is 1, so this is the first player. Obviously get the player's controller.
Standing on the edge of a cliff, realize there must be more to life than this. Reaching for the stars, traveling so far, like a dragonfly. Just grab my hand from him, send me tonight.
Okay, so we have all the sectors, we have 4 of them. Try and claim the first. Should be okay. We can stop the castle. Yep, complete the castle. Trigger an event, say we've done it. Don't need to worry about that. Return the castle. Say we've claimed it. And we leave. Okay, so that looked like it was fine. Yeah, obviously it doesn't work. What we'll do is we'll just simplify it. We'll work on one problem at a time. Try and figure out why this doesn't work. that. Start again.
What counts is that word when you start. Even if it hurts me or I get scared, just come take this risk now. We'll be prepared. I run away. I run away.
Let's play controller. So in the play controller we are I think we're going in here too soon. Yep, and we're going in here because of that player has joined issue. What we'll do is in the player mode, so the game mode, we'll just drop that. That doesn't help. Now we know that this binding doesn't occur until this process, this construction of sectors is completed. So we know that this won't fire for our first player. So we're in here. What other issues do we have? So we've got the breakpoint.
Right now, I'm holding the hotly anticipated new phone from Samsung. It hasn't been
Yeah, it's
released
fine,
yet,
no
so I
issues
can't
so
tell you
far.
about the
Just
or the
resume.
revolutionary. What I can tell you is that when you join
Castle
the
says none
Samsung
at
upgrade
some
program,
point.
you can get the very latest
Castle
phone
says no
every
player
12 months.
controller.
And you can spread the
Test
cost
player
over monthly
controller none.
installments.
Okay,
The
so
Samsung upgrade
that might be
program,
relevant
only
to
at
how we've
Samsung.com.
changed the
You must trade in your
ownership.
existing phone as part of the contract term. Credit subject to status. UK residents only, 18 or over, finance provided by CBR. T's and C's apply.
I don't want to hear that. Nope, not that either. No. Ugh, next.
You're so
I don't think we need
demanding.
that.
I just know what I like, which is to play what I want, when I want, okay?
Spotify Premium is made for
All
even
that.
the most demanding of music fans. Try it for 30 days and play any song
All
on
that.
demand. Tap the banner to learn more.
It's still an error case. I think that should clear that error up. So we see a flag. We don't see our actual castle. Is that because our the sector is initialized at 900 AD, which is fine. The castle expects the. Yeah, I think we're not attaching it. Spawn building in the sector. So I think what we need to do here is attach the actors together. But the problem with this is that the actor is spawned before it's attached. think that's a problem. Let's find out. So we're in the event graph. So we first try and get the owner, and we cast that to a sector, and then we try and get the parent. We print out 2 errors if either one of those is true, so that's fine. Didn't see where that error is. So we're trying to get the actor's owner. That doesn't appear to have anything, even though it does say it's valid. Okay, so we do have a player controller as an owner. Step over that. Yeah, and in this case we're trying to get the owner here for the flag, so that's okay. So the issue was, in this case, we don't go down to this branch. I think we need to just do this now, not that one. Let's see if that gives us our icon. Nope. Failed to attach to parent, it says. Here, that's this one here. So we attach here. And we begin play here. Yeah, so we begin playing the castle before we've actually attached it, which is just no good. I don't believe there's any event for attaching. Yeah, so there's no event to say when it's been attached, so the only real way to do it would be to trigger the event or call a function on the actor itself. Just kind of annoying. but we need the building to have the player as the owner, so that we can display the appropriate flag on the castle, for example. If the sector owned the building, then we'd have to get the sector's owner for the player, and the sector really isn't owned by a player, I don't think. I think that kind of makes some sense. So that pretty much just leaves us with calling an event on that actor. So we can, where are we? Sourcing script, event script. Attached. Custom event even. Move the begin play out the way. Put that down instead.
You said the same thing I told ya. My eyes are clear. There's no
So I'll pass through the sector just for the sake of doing so. We'll set the sector. At the moment we bind to this test function event, but we also need to get the epoch for the sector. Kind of makes it fairly straightforward by doing that, because we know that we've got a sector, so we don't have to cast it or anything. We can just work with it. And then over here, we know it's a T building, so we should just be able to call that attach to sector function. The sector is self. I don't know who uses the constructed building event now. Sorry, we do that in the sector, don't we? And that's where we attach it. And where we handle it being destroyed. Yeah, predated having this function really, didn't it? Let me make this cleaner. Yeah, so in this case we know that we're building these particular buildings. We still can't do that because the spawn building doesn't return anything useful. Although, because this is a macro, it could probably return something better. that's actually a building. Sector. So we can't do pass by reference in this case. So I continue to try and do on events. Let's see what we get for construct a building. Should be possible now. Oops. So not what we want. Factory and lab. Well, it was before. Although again, you don't actually need it to be anything specific. Like over here. There's
Wanna be all saints, trying hard to be someone else. All we want is please, giving no time to breathe.
okay, so we might do this. It's still a class reference, which isn't actually true. Seeing if I can get the inputs and outputs of this macro to actually relate to the inputs and outputs of the class that I expect it to be. Yeah, it doesn't seem to like that being a wild card. It doesn't seem to be able to figure it out. Didn't particularly like the other side being a wild card either. The output that it complained about. Because obviously the input of the macro is the base class, so the spawned actor is probably the base class, just for the way that this is all put together. Go see if this will work. Okay. Not a problem really. Would have been nicer, I think, if it had kind of figured it out. But we can always make it work manually. Fine. We'll with that. So that means that our spawn building is cast and we set the local variable. In the spawn building we're still calling this construct event. It does the attach, which we already do, it does the casting, which we already do. One thing we need is the destroyed event. Now we can't do that in there. So what we need is a function for building destroyed. That will have a building actor. Now, because we can't switch or select on the type of building in this function, we use our brute force casting to figure out which one of those buildings it is and set the appropriate reference for that. And then hopefully so we can't even bind to the event. Can we bind to it here? Won't let us bind to it in the macro, but we can bind to it in the construct building function. It's a bit annoying because it means we have to do it 4 times. Oh. Destroyed actor. Just trying to find the right function because it's not here. Custom event this 0 destroyed actor exists. Maybe we don't need the function then. We can just do it in the main event graph. Don't need any of that. We'll call this building destroyed. Yeah, true. The reason we can't use the other event because it should be an actor. Now we should be able to use the event we want in this case. So, forgotten where my function was again. Yeah, so we don't have the construct building event anymore. Once we've attached it to the sector, we want to, so we can't call the binding in this macro, but we can call it here. There we go. Find the right event. So at least we can tie multiple of these up to the same node. That's handy. So now whenever our building is destroyed, we will call our event, and our event will kind of brute force cast it to one of the actor types, and then appropriately destroy or reset the local variable for it. That'll at least handle buildings being destroyed. So we don't need that one anymore. We don't want to do that either, I don't think. I want to take ownership where we possess it. That's fine. Okay, so let's see where we are with our errors. Just got to find that error. Sector test. Okay. Here. Yes, so this is where we're spawning the castle when we press P. We don't want to do that, but we do want to possess a castle, so we'll deal with pressing P in a moment. Just want to see if we can get a building down. Excellent, yes, so we have the green building built. Now let's see if it works with 2 people. Nope. Wow. We get some errors, but we do actually get 2 castles. We don't have is the flags for the other players. So in our buildings and our sprites, we have the green flag. Don't want to do that. I'm just going to quickly chop out the yellow flag.
Take what you want from me. I'll give you everything.
So I won't worry about them being accurate at this point. Just want to get that sprite done for the flipboard. Pretty rough, chopped out flags. Just want the animations for each of the flags, and then we can minimize it too much. Come back into our level blueprint and our mode. Add the 2 flags here. So I'll go red, green, blue, and yellow. Again, we can see that the flags for the blue and the yellow, they're pretty quick and all over the place, but we'll fix that a bit later on. What we want to know is, can we have 4 players? Let's find 3. Player 1, player 3. Player 2, move around, that one there, that one there, and that one there. Now, how many buildings do we have? We seem to have all 4 buildings. Does look like our flags are in a different order. I would have thought it would have been red, green, blue and yellow rather than... But it depends on the order of the sectors, doesn't it? We kind of looked at that. Yeah, so if I go up to the first sector, we're at yellow. And down to the red one. So we do have red, green, blue, yellow.
Acoustic room.
Because the sector positioning isn't quite right. What we don't have is any of the flags on any of the other clients. So that probably is a replication issue. Our flag component.
Acoustic room. Listen now on Spotify.
See if that helps. If we just
Right now,
replicate the
I'm
flag
holding the hotly
component.
anticipated new phone from Samsung.
So again,
It
they're
hasn't
all
been
right
released
there.
yet, so I can't tell you about the
Okay, so
revolutionary.
that's better.
What I can tell
We can
you
see that
is
the
when
flag
you join the
component is
Samsung upgrade
replicated
program, you can get the very
to
latest phone
some of
every
the
12
clients.
months.
I'm not quite
And
sure
you can spread
why
the cost over monthly
we
installments.
see green here,
The Samsung
red
upgrade
but no
program,
green,
only at
green and red
Samsung.com.
here, and all
You
4
must trade in your
there. It's
existing phone as
just
part
like
of the
completely
contract.
random
Credit
on
subject to status.
what
UK
has or
residents
hasn't
only,
been
18 or over.
replicated.
Finance provided by CBR. T's and C's apply.
Always relevant, replicates. There's not really any other options for replicate the component. It's just yes or no. Unless the flags aren't being replicated. They shouldn't need to be because this is the mode. Player controller should replicate its flag to its own player once it's set. Just make that always replicated. Still seems a bit of a haphazard array of flags. Now at least seems to be that the red and the green are replicated correctly. I think that's like 3 out of 3 times so far. Yeah, red and green are working. But our blue and yellow aren't. Now is that because the blue and the yellow were done first, or the red and the green done first? I'm not really sure. What we do is just kind of do this pop it off the flag thing. So what I'm going to do instead, I did actually want that still, let's just get a copy from that array based on the number of players minus 1. Should give us our flag. Don't think that that's actually going to make any difference at all, except we're building the flags up the right way round now. I think before we were taking the last flag, building them backwards, we still only get the red and the green. So why doesn't the other players see the other flags? Thought there might have been a way to set the maximum number of players, but if there is, there's not there.
Oh, you make me wanna talk back to you. Say it like that. If I hate you, then find someone new. Baby, but you know I never will. No, so I choke you down
Game
just
session.
like a pill.
Looks like the maximum players can be done in the game session. Don't really know how to customize the game session. doesn't seem to be a way to do that. It's not really that important, so I'll just not bother. Don't really need to specify the maximum amount of amount of players at the moment. Check. No, nothing in there. Okay, so it doesn't matter about that so much. Why is my flag not being set correctly now? Maybe it's because the flag so it says no player control available for the building. Let's see if that crops up in our log. Yeah, it does. It does. I suppose that's the thing really. Again, at the moment it's being done on each of the clients. It hasn't actually made any effect, except we don't get the error anymore. See, the castle itself is always relevant, replicates, netload on client. I think I've basically made everything replicate at one point. So I'm assuming that's still true. I should be stationary. Maybe. Don't think it's failing to set the flipbook. I just don't think it is setting the flipbook or propagating correctly for those other clients, but we'll just check that. Ah, so there is a couple of occurrences where it's failed. So it's saying that maybe the sprite hasn't copied over yet. The flag should be set on the player controller, but if the player controller hasn't received it yet, when the it's the only thing I can think of, because the message I'm getting is flipbook flag blue not supported. So If we just make the flag blue the top one. I'm still getting red and green. That seems a bit odd. What have I done differently with the red and the green flags? Aside from slowed them down and stopped them being wobbly. So I am thinking that it's probably down to the fact that the player controller, although it's specifically saying that that particular flag is not supported. Let's see if nope, no clues on what that error means. No idea why. So what? Maybe we could try this. Castle. In the castle we set the fillet bucket. Get the player controller. It's the owner of the castle. Can't see any difference between one flag and another. Oops. Red, green, blue, yellow. And the fact that it's consistently not rendering the blue and the yellow flags on all the clients is just weird. Maybe it's, if we just take this off and see if we still get the error. Yeah, see, without that we don't see anything at all because we're doing it on the authority. if we don't do it on the authority, we don't know what the player controller is for the building, because the building is initialized before the owner is received. So the begin play is called before the owner is received. Again, another one of those awkward issues where the replication isn't reliable. The owner just doesn't get across fast enough. Just can't think of a clean way of getting that property across. So I guess one thing that would potentially work would be that the flag shouldn't be set directly like this, but instead we could have a variable for flag flipbook. We'll call that flag component just to eliminate confusion. We can have this as flipbook, and it's replicated, on the initial. And we'll set the flipbook to that instead. So that's not needed. That's not needed. We'll keep that. So just go straight there. And then when we have authority, we'll also set the flipbook before doing that. And in that case, we'll need all of this. Like so. So we set the flag variable because that will be or should be replicated. Probably. Let's see if that makes any difference. Yeah, see, in that case we're actually getting replication issues again. Basically saying that you can't replicate a flipbook. So having it as a variable isn't going to work either. That kind of implies that really having the player controller store the flag doesn't work, and it probably makes sense anyway, because we're going to need we're going to need more things than just the flag. Like we need a shield, we'll need the icons displayed on the minimap, all that kind of stuff needs to come from the player itself. The flag's actually only used by the castle. Compile that first. So we'll put the flags into a flag flipbook variable on the castle. We won't make it replicated, we don't need it replicated, but we do need to pick which one. So actually we'll make it a map. It's going to break it all. So we'll make that flipbook against a name. So red, green and so basically we're just going to propagate that name round instead of the actual flags, and then the flags will just be contained in the castle where actually they're used. So the test player controller will have a name for color, and our castle will get that color. And then from the flags we will find the name. So yeah, we don't need to do the authority stuff because inevitably it needs to be done everywhere, but we also know that the owner's not always going to be set. Now that's the bit that I'm a bit confused about, kind of how to handle that. Do we do this later? Do we do this after the owner's been set? And if so, how? Or do we propagate the colour rather than the player controller? So we could have a variable here for the colour, and that could be just simply a name, and it would be replicated. Now what that would achieve would be that on the authority, where we know the owner's been set, we could set that colour accordingly. Now, I'm going to basically do it because I think that I'm fairly confident this way is going to work as opposed to the alternative that won't. That's going to be initial only because it's never going to change. And we'll get the colour and we'll set that. Now, to actually set the flag or the flipbook, we really want to do it when the colour is replicated over. So we can create this onRepColor function and then just do this in that. And that guarantees it's going to happen once we've got that information. So we don't want to be setting it, we want to get it. Find. Thought this was in there, but for some reason it's gone missing, so it doesn't really matter. So that's that. And because that's done on the server always has the owner, so the replication is going to work. Now we just need to set the player controller with the right color. We'll replicate the color in the player controller as well, because we will need to propagate it around and other things will need it. So we don't need the flags anymore. We'll make an array. If we just tie that one up to there, we can get some names. Red, green, blue, and yellow. That color, set that color. Everything else is fine. So that sets the color on the player controller when the player joins. That's going to be replicated over in the player controller, but the castle doesn't care because it's only the authority that sets its own color with a notify that then comes into here and uses the color in the flags map. So let's see if that works any better. No, it didn't look like it. Still got a load of errors. Let's see where we are then. Okay, we may have got a load of errors, but it did actually look like it worked. So where were those errors? Oh, set fit but true is, yeah, we've shown the error, so let's just get rid of that. So the only error we're getting now is that because it's randomly picking a sector for the player, it obviously because it's iterating through them, every time a player joins it tries sector 0, sector 1, sector 2 and then puts them in place. So it's expected that we'll get some errors. Our flags and our buildings are the wrong way around, but I don't know. I'm not confident that the sectors are actually in the right order anyway. But that looks fairly good in terms of the kind of claiming process. We should be able to utilize that. Now final thing that I want to do is just kind of prove that all of those pieces are in the right place by adding back in on the level the possession, which is up here. So when P is pressed by whomever has authority, we get all of the sectors. We pick one at random. I think we can just do, yeah, we pick one at random by shuffling it and then getting the first one. If that's got a castle on it. So we don't need that check. Oh, actually we do need that check. We possess it, otherwise we possess it. So we basically just want a random player and to possess their sector. Which way would work best in this case? The problem with this process is that we're picking a random sector and a random player and they're not going to be the same, or they're only going to be the same some of the time. I want the P key to be more reliable so that I'm not just having to hope that it will find that kind of alignment between sector and player. That said, what we could do instead would be when we claim the sector under this, because this is all kind of somewhat temporary anyway. Is it temporary? To a point, I think I'd like to align these two bits so that we don't have one section there and one section there, but this is for the host player. He claims the sector. So we want to get the castle reference of that. And player controller. Castle reference should be a pawn. Oh, sorry, the sector. Yeah, we possess the sector. Possess the sector. Yes, I think that's correct. Even though we don't own the sector, we possess it. Even though that means two people can't. So, yeah, I think that is wrong. I think that's something that I was unsure of right at the beginning. But if the player is possessing the sector, no, maybe that's okay. Let's run with it anyway. Because we know in this case that the castle for this sector is the player's because we've just claimed it. So we'll be okay with that kind of requirement in this case, but that obviously wouldn't be the case later on. For now, that should be fine. Hopefully they're all looking at their sectors. Okay, not really 100%. Yeah, so I think the issue here with some of them not working is simply because the actors and the cameras aren't ready. Although I would have thought yeah, it's all wrong, isn't it? Oh, that's going to be a problem there. Not quite sure why only the last player successfully possessed their claimed sector. It looks like player 1 did for a minute, or obviously less than a minute, but did a little bit because it shows some resources and some population. Player 2 and player 3 didn't, and player 4 did. It doesn't really make any sense. But once a player does possess it, it does actually work. I think I'll need to think through the process of possessing, determine whether the sector is actually the right thing to be possessing, or whether we should actually just limit it so the player possesses the castle and everything can be controlled via the castle, even the creation of the other buildings. But the theory was, because the buildings are on the sector, if the player possessed the sector, then I could have access to the functionality of the other actors, the effectively the buildings. So I have to give that some thought and see kind of what kind of side effects there are, because yeah, it's as we know, it's possible for the players to look through the cameras of each of the sectors, even if they don't possess it. Just got to figure out why possession doesn't seem to work properly. Maybe the issue is that I possess it here. It should be that side of it, shouldn't it? If we successfully claim it, then we should successfully possess it, not the other way around. The issue was that other people were possessing each other player possessed every sector on the way to their own, effectively. That should work better. Ooh. Play controller and play controller. Yeah, it's a bit weird. It's a bit flickery for some reason, but it works. They're all possessing, they must all be possessing their own sectors, because there's no way two things can possess their own thing. Obviously the colours are a bit odd. So it's red, green, blue, yellow. So from bottom right to top left, which is the order in which, for some reason, my sectors are being rendered right now. But we can obviously move around between the sectors. But once we do that, we yeah, see, that's another thing though. It's like when the user changes the view, we don't want to be rendering the UI based on the sector they've possessed. They want to actually possess nothing. So what we can do, sector test level, so it's actually in the play controller. So we view the sector, and then we can do equals branch self. So basically just checking if this player that's viewing this sector is the owner of that sector. If that's true, then we want to possess it. And we want to take all of that. I'll take that actually. do it in here instead. Doesn't help having that there. So now when we move down, well up in this case, to the green, from the blue to the green, that way. Yeah, so it's saying that we unpossess. That's what we missed. Okay, so they're all going. If we move off now, that's a bit odd. It breaks completely. Don't really know what happens there. Perhaps unpossessing is breaking the camera. I think that was in the player controller settings for auto manage active camera. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be possessing it again. Maybe the actor of the sector isn't the right one. Get castle. Owner of that. See if that makes it work better. Yeah, so there's a bit of an awkward glitch beforehand. Yeah, so a couple of issues. The random mess that we start with is a bit of an awkward one. Another issue is that the clients don't have access to the building references. So in this case, it's trying, now that I've lost the possession, because when I'm pressing up page up and page down, the sector on the clients doesn't have the castle reference because it's not replicated. So the client can't connect back up again. It is odd that the order of these, despite the flags being in the same way, the order of the sectors is different. That must be just the way it renders them. Yeah, so the get all actors of class is actually returning an array of all the actors, but the order is completely different between the two clients. So that needs to be fixed. But since we can't cycle through them in the game, that's probably not going to be a problem. You actually just select the sector from the minimap. Yeah, so I think the possession and non-possession of things should really be, or potentially is more of a server-based command anyway. The clients shouldn't determine if they can possess something or not, because they could in theory possess another player's thing, another player's actor or pawn obviously, and that wouldn't be correct. So that would mean there needs to be an event coming from the player controller to the server saying that the player now is kind of wants to look at a given sector. So instead of actually viewing the sector like we are here, it's more of a player request to view a sector. Didn't really want it around the whole thing. Change player pawn possession. So I'll fix that probably tomorrow or the next stream. So with that, I'm going to stop. It's getting very late. Some little bits of progress. I think some parts of it are actually kind of better aligned now, so it's not all kind of negative progress in some regards, but as always, not quite as much forward progress as I would like. But again, it's just kind of getting some parts of it set up is taking a lot longer than I expected. Hopefully once all the pieces are in place and kind of more settled, then maybe the actual gameplay progress will be a bit quicker. But I think I'm kind of pleased with the output now, ignoring the issues that we know about. The fact that we can get 4 sectors on screen, we can get the appropriate castle, the user can change which sector they're looking at, and the population updates correctly for that sector is quite important, and kind of proving kind of some core gameplay or core mechanics are in place for that kind of viewing the sectors and viewing the information about that sector. So that's going to be pretty good. I guess the thing that we don't know, so we'd have to show the tech level of the sector. At the moment that's awkward because of it would be typically applied to the sector we're possessing, but again, we're not possessing the sector that we don't have ownership of. So it's a bit awkward. Yeah, so I'm still not 100% on whether we should be possessing the sector or the castle itself. The sector, as I say, does give us some abilities to kind of try and separate some of the functionality into the buildings. Instead of have everything kind of completely managed by the castle, we could in theory have the logic for doing the resource gathering, the mining in the mine, because the player would own the sector. The resources would transfer from the mine to the castle so the player could spend them. So doing it that way means that the logic for mining and the logic for the factory is all kind of in the appropriate building. Doesn't work with the lab though, because you need to do research before you have a lab, so I'm not really 100% on that process either. Nonetheless, hopefully we'll have some time tomorrow. If not, we'll definitely be on Friday, and hopefully be able to make some more good progress with this. So thanks for watching, and that's all for now. So good night. Thank you.